Welcome back. Today we're going to be going over some fishing tutorials here with you. We're going to be looking at how some of the gear works and how the reels and how to cast. We're going to be going over some gear repair, or maybe how to get your fishing pole that's been out in the shed all winter long, get it ready for that spring fishing that's coming up. And we're also going to show you how to make a soda can rod, so stick with us. So let's start by looking at some of the most basic gear for fishing, the fishing pole and reel combo. Here we have two examples of what are the most common that you might encounter or might have in your backyard. We've got a spinning reel that sits underneath the rod like so. And we've got the push button reel that sits over top like this. Both of them have these nice little handles to turn to reel in the line. The push button has a button pushed to release the line, whereas on the spinning reel there's a bail that has to be turned over. We're going to be going over each one of these in detail in just a second. So with the push button reel, we can see that if we depress the button, it releases the grip on the line, and then line can be fed out. As we spin the handle on the side, we hear that click. That's re-engaging the stop on the line. Line is no longer feeding out, and we can reel the line back up. If we press the button and hold it, it will be held, and the line, though ready to release, will not release from the reel until I lift up on the button like so. A great trick for when we're going to be casting later on. Now let's look at the spinning reel. So as we said earlier, the spinning reel will hang underneath the rod when it's in use. We have the bail here on the reel, which is holding the line in place. In order to cast, what we're going to do is we're going to use our index finger to hold the line in place. We'll then move the bail away, and it will stay up on its own. Then, when we release our finger, line feeds off of the spool. When we spin the handle, the bail will turn over, and we can reel back up. So again, we would push our index finger to hold the line, release the bail. Our index finger is stopping the line from traveling off the spool. We release, and it comes off. And that's an example of the spinning reel. So as we look at some of that yearly repair and maintenance that we're going to be doing to our rods, one of the things that's a really good idea is to take the reel apart and to lubricate some of those gears, check the grease, maybe the bearings, and replace the line. The line will take what's known as a set over time, and we can see here how in my hand that line has formed or set to the curvature of the spool here. And that's going to slow our line down. It's also going to create a lot of slack to where we won't have as good a chance to hook the fish. This reel also, as we're reeling it in, is very stiff, and we suspect that there's a little something going on here. So in order to take this off, we're going to take this part here on the drag, and we're just going to unscrew it, putting a little bit of pressure on here, and it comes right off. And as we can see, here's where we were getting that pressure that was making it hard to turn. We had all of this line stuck in here, so we're going to get rid of that. Okay, so we've gotten rid of that extra line that was back here causing it to gum up. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at this area right here where these gears engage the inside of the spool. We want to give that just a little gentle lubrication. There is reel oil that you can buy. I would not recommend WD-40, but some silicone-based lubricant would be really good right there. While we had this off, we went ahead and removed last year's fishing line. We can see it's very tangled. Be sure to check your local sporting goods store or bait shop for opportunities to recycle this monofilament line. We're going to be replacing it with some 8-pound test line. 8-pound is very versatile. If you're not going up north catching those big pike and muskies, it's probably going to be all you'll ever need for bluegill and some bass. In my experience, there's expensive line and cheap line, and it all gets tangled in trees just about as quickly for me. So I stick with the more affordable stuff. What we'll do is we're going to take this and string it through all the eyes on the pole, back down onto the reel seat, and I'll show you a real easy way to do that here in just a second. Okay, so we've got the line ran through all of the eyes of the pole. I've got the spool sitting on the floor. I've got this now tied to the spool itself. We want to make sure that the bail is in the up or release position, because what we're going to do now is we're going to put it in the down position and just start reeling some line on. The knot that you secure the line here is really inconsequential, because once we get a couple wraps on there, it's going to hold on. Just like my old Scoutmaster used to say, if you can't tie a knot, tie a lot. So now we're going to go here, and we're going to very slowly, I'm going to use my fingers here to provide a little bit of tension. We're gonna get those first couple of turns started just to hold it on. And if your drag's still set a little low, go ahead and crank that back down. And then, once you've done a couple turns and it's secure, just ever so slowly, wind it up and fill the spool. Don't worry about putting too much line on the spool. When it starts to reach the edge, you'll know that it's time to be done. What I like to do is I like to tie a little stick at the end of the line. That way it holds it in place, I can practice my casting, and I don't have to worry about catching stuff on a hook. Another thing that you're gonna wanna do is look at the eyes or the guides that are going through your pole. What you wanna do is give a chance just to make sure that there's no dirt or grime that's accumulated, because we want it to be smooth and clean so that the line shoots through faster and then it distributes the weight effectively across your pole. And once that's done, you're ready to go hit the water. To disassemble a push button reel for inspection, we simply grab this housing here, give it a little turn, and it's gonna come right off. We can see in here where a lot of dirt and grime will collect throughout the season. This is a great chance to get that out of there and really clean it up. Now, if you've ever had one of these that takes a little bit of work and that does not shooting the line out, it's probably because there's not enough line. We're gonna pull this line off of here and re-spool it, and we'll show you how to do that in just a second. Okay, so we've pulled our reel apart, we've gotten last year's line off, and we can see the set that this has taken, all those little tiny loops that it wants to go into. Be sure to check, again, your bait shop, local hardware store. A lot of places have drop-off points where you can send this in for recycling. I've set my new spool of line on the ground. I've ran it through the guides. Be sure to send the line through this cover before tying it off here. And then all we need to do is give this, gently put it back on. And then I like to start with a little bit of finger tension and then just start reeling it back up. You're gonna wanna reel until it stops wanting to reel in. That's a good sign that you've got it all the way up. Check back in just a second and we're gonna go over some casting techniques. Two common problems commonly associated with push button reels are when you go to cast out, the line might go 10, 20 feet and then abruptly stop, even though you know there's line remaining on the spool. This is a symptom of too little line remaining on the spool. We can see here, this reel has a feature where we can see the spool through these little windows. We want to make sure that we always have more than 50% capacity of the line available. So replacing the line yearly is a great way to ensure that this problem can be avoided. Another common problem you'll hear, and here is the correct word, you'll hear this noise. That's the sound of the drag. The drag is a mechanism built into all reels that prevents the line from breaking. Rather than breaking at a certain tension, the line will pull through, making this sound. So if you're reeling something in and hearing that sound, nothing's happening. There's no line being pulled in. You can adjust the drag with the little dial that's found most commonly right above the push button. To the minus sign makes it lighter, easier to pull through. By adjusting it to the right or to the plus, it is now stiffer. There needs to be some drag in order for the fish to pull line out rather than break your line. I like mine set a little on the softer side to remind me that it's all about the fight, not the finish. So we can reel that up. That's how you adjust the drag on a push button reel. Now there are three basic casts that we're gonna run you through an example of really quick. There's the overhead, the sidearm, and my personal favorite, the underhand. So join us as we go out into the auditorium with a 5-gallon bucket as a target and review these simple casts that you can use out on the water. Stay tuned. For the overhand, make sure you look behind you. Make sure you're not going to hit anything. I'm going to hold the button down, come back, forward and release. For the sidearm, hold the button down, bring it to the side, and just give it a little flick. Now for my personal favorite, the underhand. For this one, don't reel your tackle up as high to the pole as you normally would. Get a little back and forth motion, a push, and a flick. No fishing pole? No problem. Because with either a recycled bottle or can, you can make your very own soda can fishing setup and catch fish all the same. In fact, I've competed in fishing tournaments in Wisconsin where this was the only type of gear allowed. All we're going to do is I've tied some line to the end of this cleaned out can. I've wrapped a long strand of that fishing line around it, and I'm using this old bobber as just of a weight for practice. What we do is we put our thumb on top of the line, that way it doesn't come out. I'm going to point the can where I'm going to cast. Let out a little bit to get a little bit of momentum. And I'll come here, 1, 2, and I'm going to lift my thumb, here we go. Shoot straight out there. And then I can fish, and when I want to reel it in, why, it's as easy as wrapping line around a tin can. Using that soda can fishing pole is much the same as the underhand play. Allow a little bit to come out, hold that thumb down. Let's try that again. One of the hardest things for me when I was learning to fish as a young boy was tying the hook onto the line. That fisherman's knot can be very complicated, particularly for small fingers. We see here a diagram of the 4 parts. Putting the line through the eye of the hook. Once the line is through, wrapping it around multiple times back onto itself. Taking the tail and putting it through the little loop that's created, and then passing that back through that outer loop to then pull tight. A simple way to practice this, rather than on fishing line, is with some string and maybe taking some paper clips to make some hooks. So I'll take this through the eye, and I'm going to hold it. And then I can twist it 4, 5, a couple times, and we see that a small hole is formed right here. I'm going to take this tail and I pass it through that little hole. And when I do that, that creates an even bigger loop right here that I take the tail back through again. And then when I pull it tight, we have a nicely formed fisherman's knot. I'll demonstrate one more time. Through the eye. Twist it a couple times. Through the little loop right there. That creates the big loop here that I'll pass it back through. And pull tight. This is a great way to practice, and this string is a lot more forgiving for beginners than that pesky fishing line. Stay tuned. So I hope we've given you some good resources on ways that you can get ready for this year's fishing season, whether it be repairing your tackle indoors, practicing your casting techniques in the backyard, or catching the big one down at the lake or river. Be sure to check the Iowa Department of Natural Resources website for information about fishing regulations and licensing. Again, post your videos or photos of you trying this out at home to our Facebook page for a chance to win some great white camp prizes. We'll see you out there.